What would be examples of persons with power through history? You have emperors, you have kings, that they were dictators. But is it just a person that can have that kind of power? Could it be an agency? Could it be a committee? During the French Revolution, during the Reign of Terror, who had the power? You know your history? Yeah, the Committee for Safety was the one that was getting people executed. Isn't that interesting? It was called the Committee for Safety, and they were executing people. You're deemed unsafe, off with your head. Just remember that what they call things isn't what they are a lot of the time, especially when we're dealing with politics. When you're dealing with descriptive law, what is the source of authority? It's called reality. See, in descriptive law, all these things are just the way things are or the way things work. No one has to back up the command for gravity. It's just the way it is. It's reality. You get that? All right, now let's go to, when we deal with social law, what's the source of authority with social law? The source of authority is the people who elect officials, and those elected officials set the laws to regulate certain things in society. And often, it's after much discussion and debate. Which is most like God's laws? And before we go to the next slide, I want you to think for a minute. If you violate arbitrary law, if you violate descriptive law, if you violate social law, what are the consequences? Are they the same in all of them, or could they be quite different? So the consequences of violating arbitrary law is totally at the whim of who's in power. And you could end up in a dungeon if it's in the Middle Ages with kings and emperors. You could end up in concentration camps if it's something like Nazi Germany, or you could just be put in prison, or you could be executed at the whim of the person or agency or group in power. Now, interesting thing here is there are no consequences unless you get caught. So there's clearly not a natural consequence to arbitrary law, because if you don't get caught, there's no consequences. All right, so let's look at descriptive law. In descriptive law, the consequences are simply based on cause and effect, the natural consequences. And then social law, what are the consequences? Social disapproval. Or you could get written up, a citation, or a fine. Or you could have to go to court and you might get a sentence to prison. Now, keeping this slide up here, I want you to answer a really, really important question. Can arbitrary laws be changed? Yeah, because what if the person in power just decides on Tuesday they don't like what they decided on Monday? It could be at the whim of whoever has the power. Or another way it could change is the person in power or the group in power gets overthrown. And when they get overthrown, likely there'll be a bunch of new laws, changes. So yes, arbitrary law can be changed. Very hard in the moment, though, when the person exercising power seems to be at full strength. Can descriptive law be changed? Can you change the law of gravity? Can you change the law of inertia? Can you change the boiling point of water, outside of maybe going up a little higher, elevation or lower, which only affects it a little bit? You really can't change the principle. The cause and effect is there. Can social laws be changed? Can they be changed? Yeah, changing circumstances may lead to elected officials making different decisions. Tax rates can change. Events may change people's minds. In past history, there weren't as many school days in a year as there are now. And sometimes they talk about making more school days in a year, which I just was always like, no, don't. But events can change people's minds about things. So which of these kinds of laws are God's laws? It's descriptive, right? You see, God's laws are descriptive and unchangeable. Roy thought that God, because he was bigger and stronger, just imposed his laws on us. In fact, that's what the devil said when he rebelled in heaven. He's just bigger and stronger, and he's imposed this on us. It's arbitrary. But God's laws are actually descriptive and unchangeable. It's the way he created the universe. He created the laws of temperature. He created all the laws of science, including the law of gravity. So imagine for a moment trying to rebel against the law of gravity. Will you go there with me for a minute? Aren't you tired of the law of gravity? Man, it restricts my freedom. I don't want it anymore. In fact, I just want to fly. And I don't mean in an airplane. I mean whenever I feel like it. Wouldn't that be cool? I used to have these really cool dreams of flying when I was a boy. I don't mean in an airplane. I mean just me, Superman style kind of, Raise your hands if you ever dreamed of flying when you were a little kid. Half of you are being honest. Or maybe I should say, raise your hand if you still dream of it. Well, it's just not fair, is it? I want to fly. And I want to fly whenever I want to. In fact, the next time I'm looking out of a high-rise window, I'm not going to obey the law of gravity anymore. I'm sick of the restrictions. I want to be free. If I want to jump, if I want to fly, that's my business. I should be able to do my own thing, right? Will God punish me for breaking the law of gravity? Will he intervene to punish me for being so stupid? Will anyone else punish me for breaking the law of gravity? If I step out the window of the 20th floor, will I be punished or will there be natural consequences? You see, folks, when we really understand the Ten Commandments, they're actually a lot like gravity. It's not as easy to see the natural consequences with the Ten Commandments, but that's the way they really are. So did my school friends understand God's law did they understand it as arbitrary, social, or descriptive? They saw it as arbitrary, didn't they? And that wasn't the only thing they misunderstood. What about the motivation for obedience? There are different motives for obedience, aren't there? There's 4 levels of obedience, and we're going to start with the first level. You might say, well, that one shouldn't even be up there because disobeying, that's not caring to do right. That's rebellion. That's indifference to law. That's not a level of obedience. Well, we'll start with plain out disobedience first. Because, see, we're told that the only acceptable obedience is that which is motivated by love, right? God wants our love. And on level 1, since that's not obeying at all, clearly there's no love motivation on level 1. Would you agree? All right, so let's go to level 2 and see if it's any better. Okay, level 2 is obeying from fear, that is for avoiding punishment. This is driven by threats of pain or rejection, anger or vengeance. It's submitting to force. That doesn't seem like a very happy level of obedience. But why is it above disobeying? Well, because at least it's obedience. All right, not a very happy obedience. All right, so let's go to the third level. On the third level, obedience is to win God's favor. Earning God's good opinion so that he will dispense blessings, approval, and acceptance. Look at level 2 and 3. What's wrong with level 2 and 3? They're both legalistic motivations, right? On level 2, the motivation is fear. And that's level 2 is where my friend Roy was at. But he obviously didn't think it was good enough, but that's where he was stuck. Roy was stuck with obedience from fear because he didn't want to get roasted and toasted in hell. All right? Now, the third level is motivation for credit. That's probably more positive than obedience from fear, but it's still self-centered. It's still legalistic. And does it work? It doesn't work anyway. Can you earn credit with God? No. All right, so Let's go to level 4. Level 4 is doing right because it's right. It's an intelligent appreciation of the principles of truth. In other words, it's understanding God's law is descriptive. It's an understanding of cause and effect. It makes sense. In fact, when it's really clearly seen, it gets to the point where you say, man, this is just common sense. But apparently, it's quite uncommon. All right, so level 4 is the only one that can be motivated by love. Do you see that? It's the only one that can be motivated by love. Notice that the motivation to do right is supported by the facts, by the truth, the law of cause and effect, or descriptive law. All right, so if we use the law of gravity, since we're already familiar with that one, if you disobey on level 1 the law of gravity, it's already shown that the natural result is death when you hit the ground, right? But look at obeying from fear. Do we obey the law of gravity because someone will punish us? No, of course not. All right, how about obeying the law of gravity to win God's favor? Do we obey the law of gravity to earn credit with God? Can you earn credit with anybody else? No, of course not. We obey the law of gravity on level 4, right? Because we understand reality. We understand descriptive law. We understand cause and effect. Let's try these 4 levels with one of the 10 commandments to see if it works like gravity. This is one of my favorite things to do, but we're only going to do one commandment. I like to do all 10 of them, but that'll be for part 2. Okay? So let's use the 7th commandment. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Now, if a man or a woman decided to disobey this commandment and commit adultery and be unfaithful to his or her spouse, severe consequences may not come immediately, as with gravity. They don't instantly get killed. However, consequences that hurt the marriage relationship will happen, right? And they begin to happen immediately. First, they begin with guilt feelings that rob the joy of life. And then when things are more out in the open, then there's some severe hurt feelings to deal with. People may feel crushed. So hurt feelings and distrust, because how can you trust? Damage relationships. So when a person commits adultery, a person is embarked on destroying a relationship. That's the natural cause and effect. Forgiveness and restoration of trust is possible, but not if the adultery continues. A violation of the 7th commandment breaks up marriages and families. Does God have to punish anybody for adultery? He doesn't have to. The punishment comes, and it's unavoidable. All right? Even if the guilty ones, that had the affair, so to speak, even if they marry, the issue of trust will still overshadow their relationship. Can one be trusted now who proved unfaithful to another? So what kind of relationship, we haven't even talked about the children yet, but what kind of relationship will there be with the children from the first marriage? Sometimes children are the ones who reap the cause and effect more severely. Well, pain, hurt, and regrets will go on. So let me ask you, did the adulterer get away with it? Did not. God doesn't even have to intervene, and he's already punished by the natural cause and effect. And we're not even talking about the possibilities of pregnancy and diseases. But think about this. Can the consequences be avoided when you violate that commandment? They cannot. They cannot. That's why it's a law, and that's why it's descriptive law and not arbitrary law. It's a description of reality. It's a description of the way things really work. Now, would it be satisfying to obey the 7th commandment for fear of punishment on level 2? All All right, we already dealt with disobeying the law, thou shalt not commit adultery. But how satisfying would it be to obey the seventh commandment from fear? Well, how about level 3? Would it be satisfying to be obeying the commandment not to commit adultery to win God's favor or your spouse's favor? I mean, can you imagine a man saying to his wife, you should really approve of me and love me because I don't commit adultery? I mean, isn't it true that a good man is faithful to his wife because he loves her and he loves his family and he doesn't want anyone to be hurt? Level 4 is God's way. It's an intelligent appreciation of the principles of truth, descriptive law. All 10 of the commandments are descriptive law. All 10 of them have a natural cause and effect. Some of them are harder to see than others, but they all do. All right. Oh, I went to the youth class today, and Brett Stebbins was leading out, and they were having a discussion, and just to get their attention the discussion was on aliens. But the aliens that they were discussing are not fake. It was like beings God has created in other worlds, and angels, and Jesus, and Satan. They come to this earth, and, so in a sense, you could think of them as aliens, not like in movies, like E.T. or whatever. But then he read a quote about beings on other planets that God has made. And they got into a discussion about whether they look very much like us or look very much like God. And she just said they had the express image of God, but she didn't call them people. She called them beings. So we don't know much about them. But in this quote that Brett read, it went something like this, that these beings in other worlds that God has made have strictly obeyed all of God's laws, and therefore they have not fallen into all the mess that we're in on this earth, because here on earth, our ancestors didn't keep God's law. And it opened a door of evil and sin and tragedy. And so my question for you is this. Since these other worlds, these other beings have strictly obeyed God's law and they don't have evil and sin, are they free? We're free to do all kinds of crazy things that bring natural consequences. We're free to be idiots. We're free to be evil. Are they free? Who's more free? Yeah, they have a freedom we don't comprehend. And we begin to comprehend it when we have a relationship with Jesus. We start getting it. They understood that by keeping God's law, remember, God's law is descriptive, that by keeping God's law, they were taking care of themselves as well as honoring Him. And that's what we got to understand. When you keep God's law, you're taking care of yourself in a healthy way. All right, so what you think of God's law is actually what you think of God Himself. Right? Could you think of God as having an arbitrary law and not think He's arbitrary? That wouldn't work, would it? So many people see God as arbitrary because their parents were arbitrary. Or they see Christians that seem arbitrary. And I could spend a lot of time on this because many Christians misrepresent God's character and God's law by acting in a way that's more arbitrary than descriptive. Because, well, what do we do if we want people to understand? Do we tell them, well, you're going to roast and toast if you don't obey? I see that on the internet all the time from people. If you don't change your attitude, you're going to go in the fire. Those Christians that are saying stuff like that have an arbitrary view of God's law, and they're no more saved than the people they're talking to because they view God as arbitrary. You can't view God as arbitrary and have a loving relationship with Him. It's not possible. And that's the truth of the matter why a lot of Christian kids grow up in the church and leave, because they only saw an arbitrary God and they can't find a relationship with that kind of God. They can't find it because you can't have it until the view of God has changed. Your God image is everything to what you do with your life. So good parenting teaches the children the descriptive nature of God's laws. Takes the time to explain there's natural consequences for choices. And God's law works on the principle of cause and effect. You know, God gave the 10 Commandments to help us avoid terrible effects. Why did he do that? Because he loves us. I mean, why would he have come and died for us if he didn't really love us? How do you make sense with a God who is willing to die for you with these images of an arbitrary God? I don't know how the Christian world does it, because they view God as roasting and toasting people for eternity, and then they talk about him dying for them on the cross. And I'm thinking, you got a dichotomy of the soul going on here. But a lot of people secretly aren't happy with that. They know something's wrong with it. They got to. When we see more deeply God's love for us, we begin to trust him. He's not arbitrary. He has given us guidelines that are for our best good. So why is it easier to see cause and effect in laws such as gravity or inertia, but it's more difficult to see it in the 10 Commandments? It's a pretty simple answer to that question. The 10 Commandments, all 10 of them, are actually laws governing relationships. Matters of relationships can take up a lot of time. Gravity and inertia are laws of physical science, and cause and effect is often immediate. And so people can see the immediate cause and effect and they don't argue with it, but the 10 Commandments, they don't see it. And they delude themselves into thinking they don't need it and they're getting away with it. But in time, they find out they aren't. So the working out of cause and effect usually takes longer with the 10 Commandments, although sometimes it's surprisingly quick in certain circumstances. However, if we want to see God's law the way it really is, we can if we don't mind thinking more deeply and more spiritually. However, if we choose to be superficial and would rather blame God for being arbitrary, then that's all you're going to see. That's all my friend Roy could see, because that's what he wanted to see. I think there was something in him that hoped that there was an answer that would satisfy him, but he wasn't getting it from people. You know why he wasn't getting it from people? Because the clarity between arbitrary law and descriptive law isn't clear enough even in adults' minds, and it's not clear enough in teachers' minds. And so how do they give a good answer to a kid who's challenging them? Yeah, well, if I don't obey God, he's just going to burn me in hell. What do you say to that? And they go, oh. How do we calm this kid down? You hope for a teachable moment, and sometimes they're not even going to give you one, right? If we really want peace in our hearts, and we want to believe that Jesus really cares about us, we come to him in prayer, ask him to take our hearts, and we ask him to teach us to understand his law as a delight, like David wrote. In fact, ask God to help you see his law as like a hedge of protection from many of the painful causes and effects in life. All those things that we wish wouldn't happen to us, that other beings God has made, they don't happen to them because they got the hedge of protection. They chose it, and they saw the wisdom of it. They saw the goodness of God in it, and they stuck with God's plan. And we need that hedge of protection. Because even though we're in a sinful world and we can't be protected from everything, if we follow God's law, if we obey him, and if we understand it's good for us, if we understand it's descriptive law, it protects us from many things. It's freedom. At the beginning, I told about Roy and all his, I mentioned another guy that was big rule breaker with Roy. His name was Tom. My sophomore year, Tom and Roy were my best friends, so you kind of know where I was at. And, to Tom, he kind of made fun of religious people, and Roy did too. And Tom wasn't as dramatic as Roy, but he kind of had the same view of God as arbitrary. So Tom was a rule breaker. And they used to give out demerits when I was in academy, and Roy and Tom always competed to see who could get the most. And the dean liked those guys. If the dean didn't like those guys, they would have been long gone. But he stuck up for them, I know, behind closed doors, and he said, let's not take these guys this seriously. I think they're going to come around. Well, I don't know if Roy ever did. He really didn't. But Tom continued in college with me, and I saw that he didn't really care about being spiritual. And he got married, and I didn't know anything else about him for a long time. But a crisis came to Tom, probably in his mid-20s. A crisis that was killing him. And he turned to Jesus. And when he turned to Jesus and he found the born-again experience and he found new life, guess what new understanding he got about God's law? All of a sudden, he could see it was descriptive. It's all for our best good. Why could he see it now? And he couldn't see it before. Because something spiritual had happened. You see, and Tom is now a conference treasurer. Never became a pastor. He just became a businessman. He was building houses. And then he got involved with stewardship in the conference, and he chaired an academy board. And after a while, they brought him into the conference office to be stewardship director, and he's just been doing his job, and now he's a treasurer. He's one of the top 3 administrators of a conference. He never planned to go that route. In fact, in those days, he would have made fun of anybody in that route. And Tom, if you're listening to me now, I just praise God for the change in your life. You see, the only truly happy life is to trust in Jesus. Just to take him at his word. And let us pray for grace to trust him more.